Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, and that is Caleb. And guys, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, today we are predicting the Big Ten West, going through each of these teams and how they're going to finish and how the season could potentially play out. It's about to be a good one.
Yes, man, it's a crazy year and a crazy time, but exciting to talk about Big Ten football and
It's back, baby.
kind of guessing where we think the teams are going to shake out this year. It's a very interesting time and, short time to practice. I think there's going to be a lot of room for a lot of different upsets. We saw it week one, especially with the Big 12, a lot of shakeups and things, them losing to smaller schools. I think that there's a lot of room here for a lot of shakeup, and I think those veteran teams are really going to be at an advantage.
Hopefully these defenses play a little bit better than some of the defenses that we've seen so far. Like, bro,
dude,
absolutely
it's college
insane.
Basketball scores.
Literally, it's nuts.
63-58. Like, what the heck is happening?
So we got a lot to go through today, and how we're going to sort this out is basically we're going to go team by team, talk about what we think their record's going to be and how this can play out individually, and we'll just kind of go from there, from the bottom up, and work our way up to the top. So up the rip, we're going to start off with Illinois here, and we're going to start with some of the lesser teams at the beginning and kind of work our way to some of the more juicy ones and see how it plays out. So Caleb, what do you think about Illinois this year? Because they've got, Vegas has them at like an over under of 3 wins, of course, in the 8-game schedule. How do you feel about Illinois?
We both felt really, really bad. We were picking them very low. They did have a surprising year last year, which was exciting to see for Illinois. Lovie Smith finally got like more than a couple wins on the board for him,
with the big upset against Wisconsin.
Yeah, what a crazy game. I have them winning 1 game this year.
Their schedule definitely isn't favorable. I mean, you're looking at it, you're like, man, where are these wins going to come from, and like, how is it going to play out? They play Rutgers. That's a good sign.
That's an easy dub.
Yeah, so things you truly love to see there, but like besides that, it's hard to see where their wins potentially come. I don't think it's like unreasonable to think that they can pull off a few upsets. Maybe they can get to 3 wins potentially, but I feel like that's probably their ceiling at this point. I have them at 1 as well, man, beating only Rutgers.
While they get the most favorable cross-up match, they get the most unfavorable with Ohio State, so it kind of evens out for them.
With the other crossover, which is tough. Which, I mean, we would have gladly taken that, but hey, happens to the best of us. I mean, like with them, like they lost their like best linebackers in like Batiku and Harding. Even though they got a little bit of talent there still, I'm not exactly sure how that defense is going to play out. Their offense could still be, solid, I think, but I'm not confident in the team as a whole. It's hard to buy in at this point. Lovie Smith has had enough time now build this team if it was going to be built. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and man, that Wisconsin game last year was so fluky off those turnovers, really close to in their own territory. So, if the defense can create those turnovers again, they could win some games. But I also don't think Northwestern's going to be as bad as they were last year. And
I would only imagine Purdue's going to be a little bit better as well. So it's like that it puts them in a tough spot in the West to like, are they going to take the steps forward that we expect like Purdue, Nebraska, and Northwestern to take? I don't know, and that's where it gets pretty tough to see more than 1 win on the board for Illinois. So let's stick with that for now. Next, let's talk about Northwestern then. See what you got there. Caleb, what do you think about Northwestern?
I have them at 3 wins. I think they'll bounce back. I don't think they're going to be the worst offense in the entire country next year. Again, they obviously don't have easy games to play. Their offense, it can't be worse than last year. But is it really going to get much better? Their running backs aren't bad. Again, with Isaiah Bowser and Drake Anderson,
they were nice for sure. Penalties did kill them last year, so it's like they could bounce back in that way. But I just don't know where the wins come from. Like they're playing against Michigan State, so it's like you got Maryland early on, which they can win Maryland and Michigan State. So if those wins come through there, then it kind of depends about how do you feel about those teams. And then from there, it's like, okay, Purdue and Iowa. I just don't know where else those wins come from, unless they're beating us. If they're beating Nebraska, then someone's getting suckered those wins. So I think 2 makes a lot of sense. Maybe 3 with them beating Maryland, Illinois, and
Michigan State.
State.
I think they're a pretty weak crossover. So
right. So is that what you have them at?
Yeah, I have them
those
at 3 beating those 3 teams. Yeah.
Man, I'm gonna have them at 2. I think, but I think Michigan State can play the slow ball with them and take them down. That'll be a freaking bloodbath.
It's gonna be a bruiser of a game. Yeah. Remember when we the 6-3 game?
Oh, it was disgusting.
With us. I think it'll definitely be something like that this year.
Yeah, Northwestern. Yeah. I have them at 2. Caleb has them at 3. So let's move on to Iowa. Talk about some Iowa. Why not? Because of course we're gonna bury Iowa in this video because come on now, we all know, disgusting. But Vegas does have him at 4.5, which again feels about right where the line should be for him. But again, they're coming off of losing Tristan Wirfs, AJ Epinesa, Nate Stanley, and so you got a new quarterback in there. I don't know, Petrus, how's he going to play? They do have some talent there in the receiving core, and their defense seems to be in a pretty decent spot, I think, to be a pretty solid core. But I mean, where are you at with Iowa at this point?
There's definitely going to be
a lot of faith there. Yeah.
And Iowa isn't a team that usually makes a lot of mistakes.
Right. They want the Nate Stanley to take care of the ball and be efficient,
Exactly. And so having a team that is definitely going to make some mistakes this year, I think it's really going to cost Iowa. I see them winning 4 games still, but they don't have an easy schedule by any means. So, I mean, I have them losing to Penn State, to Nebraska, to Minnesota, and to Wisconsin. So,
yeah, that's the thing. When you have Minnesota, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Nebraska there, you have to kind of really bank on how those teams are going to perform as well. And I think I agree with you, man. I don't know really how. If you're gonna have them win 6 wins, where I think some Iowa fans have them, going 6-2, having a chance to win the West. You basically have to bank on, quarterback play that's going to be to the level of Nate Stanley. I don't know how you could possibly say that after Nate Stanley's surprisingly good year last year, I don't know how you could say Petrus is going to come in there and have a 60+% completion percentage, not turn the ball over in the double digits, and manage the games efficiently, even though there is talent around him. And even the offensive line should be at least solid where they can run the ball pretty well. But who's their running back that's going to take that step forward?
And their line wasn't that great last year.
I mean, it was definitely solid. But, you lose Wirfs.
The run game, I forget.
And they have another really talented offensive lineman. I'm going to blank on the name. I don't have listed on the sheet right here. But, they have talent there still. But I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the talent that it's going to take to win 6 games. I think 4 feels about right. For me, the game is Purdue, and I actually really think Purdue might be a pretty good team this year. I know Iowa fans are going to be like, where's the evidence that we're going to beat them? And I totally get that. That's a fair argument.
That's a really good question.
But we're going to talk about Nebraska here in a second. And I think we're going to be in full swing by the time we hit the Iowa game. And we're gonna be playing some pretty good football by the end of the season. That's where I see Nebraska beating Iowa, and I actually do think that Purdue is going to beat them. I'm gonna have Iowa at 3 wins, man. I'm sorry. I don't know how they take a step. I don't know how they take a step forward. Right? Woo. I don't know how they take a step forward from last season. Some people are saying that they're gonna be just as good as last year. Yeah, I don't see how that's possible. And the quarterback play, I honestly think Petrus is gonna be bad. So. There you go. 3 wins for Iowa this year. That could come back to haunt me.
I won't even say bad, but I'm just going to say there's going to be turnovers more than usual. Right. Again, and just like you said, just not as efficient. Nate Stanley is not there going to be throwing 62%, completion percentage.
Yeah.
For him. So, or CJ Beathard, who did the same thing. That's why Iowa had such a good stretch. Their offense didn't turn the ball over, and they make mistakes.
They finally found good game managing quarterbacks for their team, which is what they've been looking for the past decade or 15 years. And it was a record
high for them. So Can Petrus do that too? That seems like a lot to bank on.
Right, for a young guy like that too. So I agree. I am predicting a tough season in store for Iowa with 3 dubs on the year. Let's talk about Purdue next. Purdue is at 3.5 by Vegas, which, is right on the fringe of where I think makes the most sense. Rondale Moore's playing, so Good news for Purdue.
Big
Things
wins
you
for
absolutely
them.
love to see. You know, the quarterback race is a little interesting still with how that could play out on the year and who's going to actually start for him now. Again, I could easily give Iowa the dub against Purdue and then flip these kind of records here. But I could see Purdue getting up to 4 wins this year and beating that Vegas 3.5.
Again, Rondale Moore is such an X factor. He's just going to be able to put points up on the board. The one interesting thing is their giant quarterback race between Plummer and Aiden O'Connell, who had that nice game-winning drive
Well,
on
and the
us last
transfer,
year.
Austin Burton. So
Yeah, so
that is definitely a possibility. And Bob Diaco is their defensive coordinator.
They have the best defensive coordinator in the whole
Right.
NCAA. They have the best defensive coordinator in Bob Diaco. So how could I see this going bad for them?
Exactly.
What's great is it's only been a year, and just reading all of the articles from Purdue, they're already ripping him, and I'm like, this is amazing. So, he's on the hot seat already, and it's been a year. So
impressive stuff for Bob.
Impressive, no doubt. I don't know why.
Again, they were a really young team last year, where they were basically playing like 20 freshmen, like in the like at some point throughout these games. So I feel like this year they could definitely take a step forward and be a pretty big surprise in the Big Ten. Like, is it crazy that they end up like snagging a 5th win? No, but I don't think I'm willing to go that far. So I'll keep them at 4 with their losses coming to Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Indiana. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I mean, like, you know, Illinois, I think they can beat them. Iowa's a pretty key game for their season, I think, for it to feel like a success. And I'll give it to them.
I'm giving Purdue a crazy upset this year in Minnesota. Again, I just think that this is going to be a really tough schedule, and me not throwing in at least a couple of upsets would be silly, because I think it's going to happen. So I just picked Purdue to beat Minnesota. Again, like you said, they're young, and they can win games, and Brom's not a bad coach. I have them at 4 wins as well. I have them losing to Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. But again, I think they're going to be able to compete with a lot of teams this year. And, you know, hopefully, you know, we don't sleep on them or another team doesn't sleep on them, because if they do, I think they're going to sneak up on some teams and win some games.
Yeah, that's a thing, you know, that's a thing. And like, again, let's talk about Nebraska, because we really are, I think, the X factor in our conversation. Of course, we're the X factor with a lot of these teams, because Vegas has it as us at 3.5, which I think feels about right with our schedule and the question marks around the team. Of course, Husker football fans, you know, the quarterback news has been the talk of the week here in Nebraska, and hopefully when we post our Ohio State predictions video for next week, we'll know who the starting quarterback is by, you know, Monday or so. That's the first question that we have to address, is who's starting for Nebraska. And we talked about this in our season predictions, the debate between Adrian Martinez and Luke McCaffrey. And recently the talk has been a little bit more, you know, pro McCaffrey. And I think a lot of Nebraska fans expected to hear coming out of the practices and from the coaches. Originally, I would have like guaranteed that it was Adrian Martinez starting week 1 and like probably starting week 2 and maybe week 3 as well. But now I'm not so sure. Caleb, what are you thinking?
From what it sounds like, more of we have 2 players that can really go at it with what Lubbock's been saying and Frost has been saying.
Yeah.
Or even Verduzco has been saying. Like, they've been really vague about it, which almost feels like there is going to be some sort of shift. If you remember the Gebbia Martinez QB kind of battle that year, they were really hush about it, really trying to ease into that, because I think it was kind of more of a surprise decision for Gebbia.
And I think they were probably worried that whoever they chose, whoever lost the battle would transfer, and that's what ended up happening anyway. But you know, with this battle, like, I think we were talking about this right before we started recording. If Martinez starts, I don't think McCaffrey transfers, because he kind of signed on with the potential of him being the backup, since McCaffrey was already, since Adrian was already like kind of like the locked and loaded starter when he signed. So my biggest question is, if we start Luke, I feel like Adrian's gone. I think they'll start Adrian here week 1 against Ohio State, see what happens, potentially just have like the let him burn mentality and like let him suffer against Ohio State and see what happens. And then potentially Luke would start week 2 against Wisconsin or against Northwestern in week 3.
Adrian's probably going to get hurt this season. I think that's just a thing that we kind of have to accept.
Or benched.
As Nebraska fans, or benched. But most likely, one of the two is going to happen. Both the coaches, they're saying, both can win games. We want the one that can help best win games.
Right. So at the end of the day, I mean, how do you feel like it's going to affect the season? I mean, Ohio State, I think we can both chalk up as losses. So then going from there, I mean, we already did our season predictions for Nebraska, and we kind of took that all into account. We both are pretty optimistic. I mean, I have us at 4 wins, and that's with losses to Ohio State, Wisconsin, Penn State, and Minnesota at the end of the year. Caleb has us beating Wisconsin and pulling the upset and being pretty successful on the year. Explain yourself.
Well, I have us at 5 wins. Again, I think Luke starts early. I think what you say makes a lot of sense with Adrian starting the first game, but I almost feels like to me like it gives the coaches an excuse to start Luke. And I think he's the better quarterback at this point. Adrian has not looked the same. Just decision making wise, him being fast about making reads. We can talk about his offensive line being bad, and that's true, but he was also not being decisive, not getting the ball out of his hands, taking sacks.
I mean, like we mentioned in the season's predictions, Pro Football Focus had him ranked as 129th out of 130th QB on the year last year. And that's like statistical analysis, so that's tough. Obviously, we have a very wide variety of range how we could finish here. I mean, 5 wins isn't impossible by any means, but also
it's obviously optimistic.
I mean, do I blame someone in the Big Ten giving us 2 wins on the year? Not really. I can totally understand it and see how it can happen, but I'm pretty optimistic that our offense is going to play pretty well. Hopefully Omar Manning can play. Defensively, I'm a little bit worried about our outside linebackers or our linebacking core as a whole, specifically our outside linebackers and how that's going to play out in our 3-4 system. But our secondary, I think, is going to be a legitimate secondary, a very good secondary, one of the best in the Big Ten. And so hopefully that can make up for our lack of pressure, on the quarterback, and hopefully our run game is at least respectable. I'm a little bit worried about our run defense.
Our whole front seven, I mean, we had so many guys graduate. We have so little, besides Stilly, we just don't have a lot of time and experience.
Right. So on the season
situation, so
I'm expecting us to be a pretty mediocre defense, especially and specifically worse in the run side of things. With that said, I have us at 4 wins, beating the over-under by a half. Caleb has us at 5 wins, and let's move on to Wisconsin. So Wisconsin has an over-under of 7.5 wins, which is a very, very generous line from
that one blows
Vegas.
My mind.
That makes no sense. I don't understand how that's possible. Jack Cohn's gone, at least hurt. And so Graham Mertz is going to be the starter. A little scary for Wisconsin, I think, at the end of the day. Of course, losing a lot of talent on the offensive side, Jonathan Taylor, Quintez Cephas. I'm not hyped about Wisconsin this season. Their defensive side of the ball, I mean, it's probably going to be solid still, but they do have to get some guys to replace there.
In a few years.
Right. It hasn't been the Wisconsin defense we've come to know and love the past 5-6 years and hate. But I don't know. They have key games against kind of at Michigan versus Minnesota and versus probably Iowa for them in their minds. How do you feel about Wisconsin?
Underwhelmed, I guess.
Right.
I felt, again, last year, it felt they were so dependent on Jonathan Taylor to win games. Their offense felt so slow. A lot like the Nebraska offense of where it could look really good for a drive and then just disappear for 2 quarters.
When Quintez Cephas was catching the ball, they were moving the ball. It was very reliant on Quintez Cephas and Jonathan Taylor. And Cohn played surprisingly well, which I'll give him.
This is true. Mertz, there is a lot of hype in Wisconsin. He's like the highest ranked prospect for quarterback that Wisconsin's ever had. So I guess that's okay. But again, he's a redshirt freshman. I would not be surprised if most of the Big Ten West ends up with 4 wins. If Nebraska, Wisconsin, Purdue, Iowa, even Northwestern somehow all just had 4 wins, that wouldn't blow my mind.
It's just a bloodbath in the Big Ten West.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen in a lot. I think the SEC, it's going to be similar where it's just going to be.
Well, the Big 12's already happened.
The Big 12 is already a bloodbath like that. It's going to be really hard to break out when you have just so many games in a row and
a lot less practice leading into the year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of parity. So I think Wisconsin, I have us losing to Nebraska this year. They're going to lose to Michigan. Minnesota, and I'll have Iowa upsetting them. Again, I got to throw in some upsets. So
yeah, so you have 3 teams locked at 4-4 right now: Minnesota, Purdue, and Iowa. And you were very torn about the Nebraska Northwestern game, so you could easily have them all of them being 4-4. Exactly what you were saying.
I could have seen this all at 4-4, and then
Minnesota left at the top. Their odds are 6 wins, which I think is a little bit surprisingly low based off their schedule.
Wait, so they think that Wisconsin's going to come out of the...
Yeah, Wisconsin's going to win and be the great team here, but I just don't see that happening. Minnesota, though, I do unfortunately believe in this offense. I hate to say it. It hurts me to say. It sucks. It does suck. Though. But, they lost Tyler Johnson, obviously, on the offensive side. Antoine Winfield Jr., the 2 big names they've lost on each side of the ball. New offensive coordinator. They're bringing in Mike Sanford now as their offensive coordinator. And, Rashad Bateman has been the kind of the question mark about whether or not he's going to play. But it sounds like he's going to be there. And they're returning basically their whole offensive line. That's what scares me when you're returning Tanner Morgan as well. Like, this core could be running the ball very
the most
well.
Accurate quarterback in college football last year.
Right. And
Yeesh.
And they're going to probably run the ball very, very well. And I would imagine Tanner Morgan's going to have a lot of time to throw. He'll be able to find his guys. I think they're going to be a really good offense, and their defense is going to be solid enough to allow them to win a lot of games. They have key games against Michigan, against Iowa, and against Wisconsin. Where are you at with this team?
Yeah, I have them at 6 wins, so I'm pretty spot on, I guess, with the over-under. I think they'll lose to Michigan, and again, I had them upset against the Purdue, upsetting them. Yeah, again, Morgan's a really good quarterback. My only thing where I could see with Minnesota being a lot worse is if their offensive coordinator that went over to Penn State, if he was really the genius behind their offense last year. And if that's the case, then that maybe they only win 5 or 4 games, but
well, their strategy against us worked to attack the outside linebackers all game.
It was beautiful. I mean,
worked great.
I couldn't have wrote like
that. Was so painful. Just every time, just beating us down. It was just
so good. Straight to the edge. To the edge.
I don't know. I'm unfortunately a believer in this team, and I think they're gonna beat Michigan at home and set them up to go 8-0 in this schedule. I'm gonna pick them to be the real deal. I'm kind of hanging my hat on Minnesota, which is terrible and feels horrible, but I guess it's kind of how we end up. I have them going 8-0. So in our schedules here, I have Minnesota at 8-0, at 8 wins, top of the Big Ten West. Caleb has Minnesota at 6 wins, atop the Big Ten West. I have Wisconsin at 6 coming in second. Caleb has Nebraska coming in at second with 5 wins. And Wisconsin, Purdue, and Iowa, Caleb has tied at 4 wins, with that sorting out because the tiebreaker is Wisconsin, Purdue, Iowa. I have Nebraska at 4, Purdue at 4, but Nebraska wins the tiebreaker, so 4-4 there. Iowa at 3, Northwestern at 2, Illinois at 1. Caleb has Northwestern at 3, Illinois at 1. So that is our final predictions, and that would send Minnesota to go through to presumably play Ohio State and probably get smoked either way. So
get absolutely smoked.
Yeah, we think we're both pretty confident in Ohio State this season be pretty good, which we'll talk about more in our next video, our predictions for the Nebraska-Ohio State video. But we do hope you guys enjoyed this video. Drop all your comments down below. Give us one crazy scenario that you could see happening,
where we have just a crazy tie of like a bunch of teams at either
5 wins,
and tiebreaker gets it, just like how Northwestern somehow got the Big Ten West champion. I think this is very probable for this year, just because they're
Minnesota, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Iowa all tied for 5, or Purdue.
Yeah, I think, or even like 4 wins. Either 5 or 4 wins.
Yeah,
it's just a weird season. It's a really weird season where 500 seems pretty good for most teams. I think it's just, who wants to play more that week? Will we play this whole season? How are the COVID stuff going to work? It's happened in the NFL where teams have to postpone. How does that work? Right. I think there's going to be a ton of X factors in this crazy season. But I mean, there's a world where Nebraska could shake out at number 1. It's probably Minnesota, though. It feels like it's Minnesota's year
out of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. I mean, would you be most surprised if Iowa wins the Big Ten West?
Yes.
Who do you think has the lowest floor out of Iowa, Purdue, and Nebraska? Probably
Purdue.
Nebraska.
I think Purdue is a really swing team for me. I could just as easily see them winning 1 game as I could have them like winning 6.
Oh my.
Or 5.
Yeah, 5 probably feels more realistic.
Like 1 win to 5 wins would not surprise me with Purdue. I would be like, oh yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Iowa,
yeah.
I think, is definitely the safest. They're gonna find a way to win some games.
I mean, I think 3 is like, how do they lose less than 3? Yeah, like that would be crazy.
And for us, I mean, yeah,
2's the floor for us probably.
Yeah, and if you count in the crossover game, I think we'll at least get to 3. But I think 3 wins is very possible for Nebraska.
Yeah.
Again,
3
I just
feels
really
like
don't
probably
believe
the
in this.
most like logical answer for Nebraska, which I can totally see why people pick it. But I think I see us hitting a stride here in the second half, kind of like we did in Frost's first year, where in the back half we really finally found a stride, and I think that's probably gonna happen this year as well. So that's where we're at with this, guys. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you guys really enjoy it. Hit the notification bell, pound that bell, baby, smash it. But we really hope you guys enjoyed it.
Tell us why we're going 8-0.
Amen.
Tell us we're winning a natty.
Facts.
I would like to cover us winning the national championship.
And hopefully we'll actually have a bowl game to talk about this year too, which could, based off how this is looking out and how they're doing the bowl games this year, very possible. But as always, guys,
think we can get some press passes for that bowl game, Josh?
Hey, why not? As always, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This is Backseat Sports, and guys, we will see you next time. We out.